Alright, so just as an introductory video, I'm going to just use my phone for the time being. I won't have any expert editing skills, no fancy programs, no nothing like that. These introductory videos are going to be short and are just going to be explaining some things. Welcome back to my channel, first and foremost. Even though the poor thing is under a pitiful amount of construction, I'm just going to do what I can with it. And I'm going to be shifting and moving and trying different spaces and different angles and see what I can actually come up with. I think my books in the backdrop it's kind of cool. So we're going to go with that for the time being. So I had mentioned before in my introductory video that I want to do a gaming channel, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted it to come across. Whether I wanted it to be just me talking about my current campaigns. I thought about that, and then I thought, well, there are some YouTube viewers out there who are subscribed to my channel who are also my players. And the last thing I want to do is give away secrets, but I suppose I could. If I don't want to talk about current campaigns, I have tens of thousands of other campaigns I've done over the years, some of which have actually stopped. And those campaigns are usually memorable because they're so long running with characters that usually started out at very low levels. So whenever you create low level characters like that last that long, you really begin to identify with certain pieces and portions of them, their back history, their psyche, their motivation, and whatever else. I could talk about previous campaigns. I could also talk about characters that I have made for games that are currently going. I could also speak about characters that I have made that occupy a rather large number of slots in my spirals, my notebooks, my binders, my folders, boxes, everything. I could talk about those, and I could talk about the ones that I've made here more recently, like the one that I mentioned in my beautiful wife's vlog, KINDIGO'S Corner, and whenever I get down to actually sitting down, I will relink to her channel, but check her out anyway, KINDIGO'S Corner. It's our family vlog that we have going. I mentioned in that vlog that I had an old friend of mine over for the weekend, and he and I impromptu sat there and thought about it, and we were going to maybe invite like one of the neighbors over for a game of Magic the Gathering, but it didn't end up happening. So we sat here and just said, what haven't we done? And it took us a couple of minutes to actually sift through what we haven't done, because he and I have actually been gaming for straight maybe a decade. It's about right. So I've done plenty of just like one-on-one games for him, and we've asking that question, what haven't we done? That's a long answer. So we sat there and deliberated that we haven't actually done a D&D game between he and I that was an introductory game in a very long time. The last time we did a closest thing to an introductory game, meaning a first level campaign game, between he and I was Star Wars character, Star Wars RCR, Revised Core Rules, a long time ago, which ended up becoming one of my longest running campaigns I've ever run in my life. And it spanned between the levels of, I think we started at third. Pretty sure I started that game at third. And most of the characters ended up whenever I had to stop between 16 and 18. And since there is no epic levels in Star Wars, when you hit 20th level, it's time to retire the character. So that's the last time we had that in that campaign. 4 years, maybe 5 off and on. So, I mean, it's been a long time since we did an introductory campaign, so I decided to go ahead and say, make first level characters. So we tossed some ideas back and forth, and he had some ideas. he had one concept he wanted to do about a cleric, or at least like a religiously tied person, to Vecna, which is a Dungeons and Dragons Greyhawk god. So we tossed around some ideas with that, and I was trying to create it something along the lines of not quite completely good, not quite completely evil in the campaign. And he had some concepts, but when I started to look at what I was going to create, he went ahead and modified his. So now he's got his character done, and I've already looked at it, and I'll be approving it because it doesn't, nothing's wrong with it. I sat down today, whenever Trinity had her nap, and I try to figure out where I'm looking here. I actually sat down and created mine, which was just under 2 hours. I finished, and he ended up using a lycanthrope template for his character. So I said, okay, since you're going to be considered a higher level character anyway, from being first, since he's playing a cursed rather than an afflicted lycanthrope, meaning he was born with it, I went ahead and I picked a template for mine too. So I got all of mine done with the template, just under 2 hours, and the only thing I'm lacking is actually a name. And the backstory I have mostly created inside of my head. It goes along very much with why he has the template that he does. And I ended up creating a first level rogue who is being specifically built for becoming a prestige class known as the Ghostface Killer, which is a prestige class out of the supplement book Complete Adventurer. I don't have it, but I have access to it, so I'm specifically building for that. The template that I gave him, even as a first level rogue, it's going to bump him up +3 in his level adjustment and +1 for his challenge rating. So when it's all said and done, basically even at first level will be considered like 5th level characters. So I get to bump up what I would normally throw at a first level character. Otherwise, I would totally, if I threw challenge rating 5 monsters at two technically level 5 characters, it would be a 1-round squash fest. So I get to play around with it at least a little bit. And the template that I gave him came out of the Dragon magazine. Actually, I had looked online for a big PDF about the complete list of templates all throughout like 3.5, and that's what we play is 3.5 edition. And I found one called Poisoned, and it came out of Dragon magazine issue 350, I think it was. And basically in a location that has been arcanely poisoned through magic. A good example would be like Wild Mages, another prestige class that comes out of the complete arcane, I think it is. Another one would just be like Spell Pollutant, and Runoff, and like if you have like golem creators or construct creators, and they cast off what they can't use, and the magic basically seeps into the land, it becomes corrupted, and it corrupts everything they touch. So being a poisoned character actually, it mutates you. It actually gives you huge, like snake fangs that do fold back, but it gives you a bite attack. It gives you poison, and you get to choose what kind of poison you're going to end up taking. And I ended up choosing will sapping. And the only problem is, if you are a caster of any sort, there's a 25% chance arcane spell failure because of the fangs not being able to talk right. There's also a 25% chance of magic item activation mishap because you can't say the proper word clearly enough for the item to recognize it, basically. So He is a human rogue headed towards Ghostface Killer, but he's poisoned. And the way I created him was just using feats for the purposes of giving him a bigger and better bite attack, upping the fortitude DC for the poison. And then the last feat I gave him was if because poison comes in two different segments. Once you get poisoned in D&D, you have to make, usually it's a fortitude save, and it comes in two different saves. If you make the first one, you never have to make the second one a minute later. But if you fail the first one, you take the ability damage or whatever it does. A minute later, you have to do it again at the same DC. And if you fail, then the secondary kicks in, whatever that may be. With will sapping, the first round of damage is a D4 wisdom drain. Well, damage, I should say, not drain. And the secondary, after the feat called Deadly Poison, it's a D4 times 2. So it'll be between 2 and 8 wisdom damage the next time. So it's pretty potent, actually. And that's all I gave him. Because I'm going to make him a rogue and he's going to have sneak attack, I gave him like a couple of daggers. But honestly, after taking improved natural weapon bite, he'll be doing a D8 for damage. He has a very decent strength, so I gave him no real other damage. I just intend to get a hold of a amulet of natural attack or something like it. In order for his attacks to become magical eventually, I'm not going to give him any other weapons because there's no point. Yeah, I rolled up using the... Where'd it go? This book we're really proud of. It's backwards, but the Magic Item Compendium. Yeah, I know it's got a little damage. It's been well loved. I love that book because it compiles all the magic items, new and old, all in one place where I can get a hold of them. I did the normal rolls out of that, and he's basically done. I've got his backstory mostly in my head, like I said, and I know it's going to be kind of cool to play this type of a template, because I don't use templates all that often. Usually whenever we have templates, we usually default to like half dragon, half fiend, half celestial, the normal templates that are used. And I was honestly thinking about playing a monster instead of just using a template. I was trying to work out maybe being like a morgue or something, because I recently got the Libris Mortis book. And I was very, very happy with all the undead stuff in there. But I decided not to, because morgues end up taking like 20 levels to totally cap out their final monster abilities. So I was like, no. So I just chose a human with a very, very low-end template, oddly enough. I got like +2 con out of it, and then the bite attack, and that was literally it. Compared to what you get like as a half dragon or a half fiend or half celestial or half Illithids, half fae, stuff like that. You get a huge list that always goes up whenever your hit dice go up. Poison actually is relatively a little template, so I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna run with it. The other thing I'm going to do for this game that I'm going to try to do for other games too. I got a hold of this quite some time ago, and again, I apologize because it's backwards. This is the Ravenloft Taroka deck I got from Sword and Sorcery. I actually got at a convention I went to, a gaming convention in Tampa Bay, Florida, called Neglect some years ago. I'm going to start using the Taroka deck as actually a game motivator, a surprise kind of inducer. So I can use it for like story elements and plot hooks and just like random things that come up. And there's rules for that too, and it actually functions as a real tarot deck too. So I'm going to be using it as a game device for this particular game, and I want to use it for some other games too that I already have going with a much bigger crowd that we play here in the Rancor pit at our place. So anyway, I've rambled on way too long, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the video, and I hope to be able to do more videos like this in the future. So until then, grab your dice, roll initiative.